Hey, it's Missy.
It's April.
And this is SheelaNaGig. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for listening as always. We love you guys.
We do.
We're really grateful for you.
We so appreciate your listening.
Yeah. Thanks for your comments and your questions. And, thanks just for being part of the conversation, part of the fight. Woo!
Yeah.
Of course, here at SheelaNaGig, we present and explore our own Sheela in each episode. And typically, for us, that's a woman whose strength and perseverance, inspires us, empowers us. A woman who's, filled with greatness, and maybe we feel like you should know more about her, or
maybe you already know her, but just don't know something that you ought to, or that you'd be really interested in.
Right. So it doesn't preclude people who are known, but we want you to know a little more. And then, of course, we want you to know about people maybe you've never heard of, too, because there's plenty of those. I always say, just like a crime podcast, we're never going to run out of content. Sadly.
Never.
Yeah. No. But how are you, April?
I'm well, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm good. I want to bring up that I'm a big podcast listener, and my friend Jennifer Gomez, we're both crime junkies. I have to admit, we both like crime podcasts. And she turned me on to The Prosecutors, which I just started listening to. And Brunt and Alice, shout out, amazing. They're great. They're prosecuting attorneys, and basically they kind of take on cases and go through the case and take on their opinion as prosecutors.
That should be interesting.
Super interesting. So anyway, world famous case about Adnan Syed and Hayman Lee, which of course has been done and done again. There's been documentaries, there's been books, there's been interviews. It's still happening over 20 years later. But I was really into Serial because I love the Serial podcast. I do. And they did an amazing piece about Adnan Syed. And by the end of that podcast, I thought he was probably innocent. I did.
Wow.
But the prosecutors took on the same case. And I am on the fence now.
Oh,
I am on the fence now. Yeah, because it was really revealing. And so I'm just bringing that up because I love to give shout out to other podcasts, and I think the Prosecutor is fantastic. And thanks to my friend Jen for recommending it. But yeah, it's interesting now. I've been doing a lot of deep diving in my spare time, and late at night when I scroll. You all know I scroll late at night. And
I was going to say, in your copious amounts of non-existent spare time.
Yeah, exactly. And with my husband going, go to bed, with like a pillow over his head. Anyway, because I have to have the light really bright on my phone. Because I'm blind. Anyway, that's something I want to bring up. I also went to the Haunted Hayride this week. I went on Wednesday night. I brought 3 12-year-old girls and my daughter, so 4 12-year-old girls actually. And my son met his friend there. And it was an interesting night. It was a little scarier than usual because on the Haunted Hayride, the performers actually got on the hayride. That's never happened before. Usually they just kind of run around and scare you. And they actually physically got on the hayride, and I think it scared the shit out of a lot of people.
There's no escape.
No, especially Nolan's friend.
No.
She got so scared that she didn't even want to go on it, go on any of the.
Oh dear.
The tours or the mazes or the haunted houses. She was like, "No, I'm done." She was so
sounds
scared.
like me. I'd be a chicken.
Yeah, I'm a little bit chicken too. And I was there with 2 other grown-ups, 2 friends of mine. It was funny. The 3 of us were like, "Okay, we should do a haunted house. Yeah, let's do it." And my friend Gina took the lead, then me, and then Shannon. We were all just holding on to each other, and we were just shrieking the whole time. We were all screaming so loudly.
Oh my goodness. I was going to say I must have a boring life. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff, but you're making me glad that I'm boring.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I had to do it, even though I don't really enjoy it
when
per
you
se.
have kids. Yep.
And I mean, I hate roller coasters, for example, because what's fun about feeling like you're going to die? That's what I want to know. That is not fun to me. This is not quite as scary as a roller coaster, but it is scary. I didn't really have a desire to go into more than one, but I'm glad we did it because we paid $65 for our tickets.
So you had to get your money's worth.
So that's my news. What's up with you?
Not a lot, other than I threw my back out, and that's not been fun.
Still, that was a while. It was over a month ago now.
Yeah,
Poor
and
April.
it's still going up and down, but that's about all the excitement.
Sucks.
I'm actually enjoying being boring, and I have to confess, and apologies to those of you who are not sports fans and those of you who are not specifically Dodger fans, but I've been really stoked about the World Series.
Yeah,
the
for
Dodgers
sure.
getting in.
Tonight's going to be a big night.
Big night.
But April and I are going to be able to play tonight.
We are.
We're super excited. Tell them where we're going.
We are going to see Ms. Holmes and Ms. Watson, apartment, is it 102? It's a comedy based on a female Sherlock Holmes and a female Watson, and we interviewed the director and one of the actors, and they were
Amy and Cheryl. They were amazing.
They were great, and we really encourage you to listen to that podcast, especially if you're interested in theater. They had a lot of fascinating things to say.
Yeah, and like I said, we're going to go see it, so we'll definitely let everybody know how we liked it. I know we're going to love it. It's going to be great. It's a long tonight, so we're excited. We're excited about that. April's freaking out. She's like, stop
talking.
But I just wanted to tell you.
Enough.
I just want to tell you, I was just talking about you last night because we were all exhausted. It was a super exhausting day. I think the universe made us all super tired when we got there. And then we all started feeling better, and everybody admitted, you know, my batteries are getting recharged just by being with you guys. And I said, if April was here, she'd be passed out in the corner because her batteries do not get recharged.
My batteries don't get
by
charged.
people. No,
exactly.
And that's why and they all started laughing. They're like, seriously? I didn't know that about April. I'm like, yeah, that's why she's not here. They're like, we were wondering why she doesn't come. I'm like, yeah, she does not get her batteries charged by other people. Yeah. See, right now, like I said, she was like,
don't stop talking. No more. We've chit-chatted enough. Let's get to the Sheela.
All right, let's get to the Sheela. She just wants to tell you about her Sheela.
I do.
And
I'm
ready for a story. I'm ready for
excited.
a Sheela. Bring it.
Okay. So Elizabeth Parsons Ware Packard was born in Ware, Massachusetts on December 28, 1816. And she was the oldest of 3 children, the only daughter born to Samuel and Lucy Ware. And Samuel Ware was a congregational minister in the Connecticut Valley of the Ware Congregational Church. And it's really important to say that Elizabeth was a curious child, and she was so curious that her Calvinist minister father really worried about her. He didn't like the fact that she questioned things and she wanted to know more than what he said.
It's not very ladylike.
No, not very ladylike, and it didn't jive with his Calvinist sensibilities.
Okay,
but she would ask questions.
I do want to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Because you gave us, you didn't tell her who is this person? Like we're on the edge of our seats. You always got to give a little who is this person? And then we jump in. You didn't give us who is she?
She's Elizabeth Parsons Ware Packard.
But who is she? What does she do?
You're just going to have to wait. Stick a pin in that.
We usually tell you ahead of time what's going to happen, like who it is. But I guess you're just going to have to stay on and wait this time. April's mixing it up. She's mixing up her approach.
Why not?
All right.
Okay. So she was curious. Her father was a Calvinist minister, and he didn't like the fact that she wasn't just swallowing what he was teaching, but she liked to ask questions. And she was educated at Amherst Seminary School for Girls, and she studied the classics and literature, but she excelled at mathematics, and she was quite a great student. So her family did struggle with financially, and so they took in boarders to help supplement their income. And one boarder that they took in was a man by the name of Henry Ward Beecher. And Beecher would soon become the most popular preacher in his country. So Beecher's inquisitive nature included unorthodox religious teachings. He was against slavery, and he really had this emphasis that was quite unique about God being love. God was love, and he had a rhetorical focus on the love of Christ. And his ideas, which were broader and less dogmatic than most of the Calvinist teaching that Elizabeth had been raised with, really fascinated Elizabeth. And for the remainder of her life, Elizabeth would follow Beecher's preachings and his writings through her adulthood. He really shaped her. In fact, there were 2 events that shaped Elizabeth Packard. And the first was the introduction to Henry Ward Beecher, but the second and maybe more influential was that when she was 19, she suffered from a condition that was known as brain fever. And it was a 19th century term for an illness that was thought to be caused by severe emotional upset. So it was like believed to be an emotional condition.
Like a nervous breakdown, maybe.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
And when the family physician was unable to help her, her father decided to have her committed to an asylum in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Oh.
And thankfully for Elizabeth, after 6 weeks, she was declared healthy and released. But her experiences at the asylum led to her growing mistrust of the medical system. Mm-hmm. And she believed that and felt that her experiences at the asylum was more troubling and more harmful than her original brain fever, whatever that was. And that the things that they did to her to cure her were really cruel and torturous, and she felt that it was the passage of time rather than any quote-unquote medical care she received that caused her to get well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so she was released, and at the assistance of her parents, Elizabeth married Calvinist minister Elizabeth Packard. And Theo, as he was called, was 14 years older than Elizabeth.
Okay.
And her new husband was often described as cold and domineering.
Why would she marry a cold and domineering person?
Well, in those days, women didn't really get to determine their futures.
Yeah, but after what you said earlier about the fact that she was outspoken and she was curious,
yes.
and, she seemed somewhat self-realized.
Yes.
So this surprises me. But maybe that's just... A lot of times people marry people like their parents because that's what they're used to.
He was very much like her father. In fact, Theo and her father were very close friends. Ugh. And she, they described the marriage as forced, that she was pushed into it, not necessarily thrilled or happy to do it.
That sucks. All right.
But the couple had 6 children, and they lived in Western Massachusetts.
And they had 6 children?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. And they lived in Massachusetts until September of 1854. And then Theo was transferred first to Ohio and then Iowa for short periods. He was also a minister. And then finally they moved to Manteno, Illinois. And it turns out that Elizabeth really liked living in the Midwest. You can appreciate this.
I can appreciate that.
Because as she got older, and as I said, she was a questioning, curious young woman. She was inspired by Beecher when she was young. She began to question more and more of her Calvinist teaching and appreciated the greater independence that she found living in the Midwest, as opposed to living in Massachusetts or even in Ohio and Iowa, where the Calvinist influences were more dominant and the places were just more conservative. She really felt like she had a new freedom, that it was less restrictive living in Illinois.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, she was happy to do that.
I like Illinois.
So over the next decade, Elizabeth stepped further and further away from her traditional roles as wife and mother. She started doing more missionary work, she traveled independently, and she began to express religious views that really diverged from those of her husband. And her religious beliefs often not only diverged from Theo, but offended him. And the couple also disagreed on methods of their child rearing and managing family finances, as well as the morality of slavery. Elizabeth defended abolitionist John Brown, and her defense of him embarrassed her husband, Theo.
Awesome.
So not so awesome.
Well, I'm glad that she finally, came to her senses and realized that she did have opinions of her own. And
she knew she had opinions of her own.
Well, she did, but she still married this guy who... She did. That's what I mean.
And had
now
6
now she's
children.
expressing it.
Yeah. And the straw that broke Theo's back when it came to Elizabeth's views happened when she expressed opinions at their local Bible study that were way not in line with Theo's.
Good.
You have to remember that this was 1860, and the country was on the cusp of the Civil War.
Okay.
And women in America had very few rights, as we've talked about. As soon as they were married, they were considered the property and possession of their husband, and their children were also considered the property and possession of their fathers. So both Elizabeth and Theo opposed divorce. While Theo did so because he believed it was immoral, Elizabeth was a little bit more practical about it because she was afraid of losing custody of her children if she divorced.
Yeah, good point. I see that. But I mean, I think that happens to people today all the time.
Yeah.
You know, people stay with people because of the children, you know.
Right,
They don't want their children taken away or sometimes they think it's bad for the children, which I don't know about that, but yeah.
But at the time, Elizabeth understood that divorce from Theo meant that she would lose her children.
She would lose her 6 children, which would be heartbreaking.
So Theo was getting really upset with his wife's contradicting him and for her views being so divergent of Calvinism. And just for a point of clarification, Calvinism is a major branch of Protestantism that's based on the theology of John Calvin, which really emphasizes God as the supreme power and the sovereignty. And so Elizabeth was looking at it at a God that was less dogmatic and less punishing and just more universal. And that was really getting on Theo's last nerve. So he had been aware that Elizabeth had been institutionalized before. And Theo had been aware that his wife had been institutionalized when she was younger. And he decided to deal with his misgivings about her by beginning to imply that her sanity was questionable.
Ugh, what a fucker, man. I hate that.
He also became even more authoritarian and controlling than he had been. And he claimed that Elizabeth was neglecting her family because she was doing this missionary work and speaking out. But I want to say that Elizabeth was a devoted mother. She just really balanced her household and family and maternal roles with the causes and the ideas that she believed in.
Sure. Now, this is an age-old thing, you know, the sanity thing, you know? It's a way to control. Look at Zelda. Look at freaking Zelda and F. Scott Fitzgerald. You know what I mean? It's a way to control women. Oh, yeah, she's just fucking crazy. You know? It's so pathetic.
Well, in 1860, it was perfectly legal for a husband to have his wife committed. And the laws in Illinois pretty much stated that while a man was entitled to a due process through a hearing or trial to assess sanity before he became committed, a married woman could be institutionalized literally at the request of their husband.
Are you kidding me?
Without really producing evidence of mental health issues.
Oh my God.
And you know, at the time...
Convenient. How freaking convenient, right?
Well, at the time, similar laws existed in many states across the U.S. And so Theo committed Elizabeth to the Illinois Hospital for the Insane. And all that was required for him to do this was for Theo to secure a letter from 2 doctors attesting to her insanity. So the doctors were not even required to examine or talk to her.
They just said, write these 2 letters.
Yeah, they could take the husband's testimony as proof. And when Elizabeth entered the asylum, she figured that, you know, it would be for a few months at best, and then Theo would reverse his decision, but he didn't.
Oh my God.
So Elizabeth stayed at the Illinois Hospital for the Insane for 3 years, during which time...
3 years?
Yeah.
So sad. This is just so sad. And her poor kids.
Right? Yeah.
No mother.
Nope. They had their dogmatic Calvinist father, you know, which is very rigid. I'm sure he was a
great parent.
Well, let's get back to Elizabeth, though. In her confinement, she vigorously protested this forced confinement for all 3 years. And at this point, she'd been married to Theo for 21 years. She was 44 years old, and her youngest child was 6.
Oh, which was 6-year-old with no mama. That's terrible.
And during the next 3.5 years when she was hospitalized, Elizabeth was pretty much virtually a prisoner.
Okay, I want to make a little statement here, though. When I said how sad no mama. It could be two same-sex parents too, but poor child that didn't have.
Well, the mother that they knew was taken away.
That's what I mean. I just, when I said that, I just don't want to, obviously there's same-sex couples too, and
right. But I think
exclude them.
The point is that they lost a parent and they lost the legitimacy of the parent because Theo, the dad, was saying she's crazy, you can't, she couldn't be trusted. Yep. And so I think that's another form of trauma for a child.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How traumatic for all of them.
Yep. So she was denied all contact with her children, as well as with friends and other family members, because Theo had decried that they would be improper influences on her very fragile mental state. But here's the thing. This is why I'm sharing Elizabeth's story as our Sheela for today.
Oh, it is. Wait, drum roll.
Drum roll, please. Remember when I said Elizabeth just questioned things?
Yes.
She was curious. She didn't accept whatever was told to her. That was a theme of her life. So while she was hospitalized, she was a little bit of what you would call a rebel rouser.
Yay, rebel rouser, Elizabeth.
Now, it's important to note, and this is pretty serious, that she was subjected to horrific physical abuse by attendants and emotional abuse by the director of the hospital, who destroyed any letters either addressed to her and those she tried to send out.
Oh, God.
She was repeatedly told that everyone had forgotten her. What shocked Elizabeth the most was the realization that an overwhelming number of women she met in the hospital were married, just like herself, perfectly sane, but whose husband had them committed pretty much to keep them in line.
Jesus.
3 women had the sinful act of having indulged in reading novels.
Ooh.
And the youngest inmate that was forced into confinement was 5 years old.
Oh my God, 5 years old.
So as I mentioned, Elizabeth was a bit of a rebel rouser, and she began campaigning for fairer treatment in the hospital. And at first she organized supportive prayer groups, but when the superintendent saw how popular she was becoming with the other women, he immediately disbanded that.
Of course. I have a question.
Yes.
Was she getting shock treatments or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't even know if they had shock treatments then. There have been some books written about Elizabeth that I will share about more in the end.
Okay.
But the research that I did, I couldn't get the specifics of what they actually did to her, other than it was cruel and it was considered abusive.
Right. And obviously you said she was experiencing a lot of abuse and that type of thing. But, things that would kind of take away their personality, render them a little bit of a zombie. You hear about that a lot.
Right. Well, one thing I read was that they did something that was the equivalent to what we know today as waterboarding.
Ooh.
But I don't know that it was actual waterboarding. And I don't think they were doing shock treatments back then, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And I would like to read more and learn more about what happened, but I couldn't find it in my initial research.
Right.
But the next thing Elizabeth did was she began to campaign for fairer treatments by the attendants. And the superintendent of the facility, Andrew McFarlane, placed her in solitary confinement for disrupting the inmates. And unbeknownst to him, Elizabeth had kept a daily journal detailing all of the events that she was privy to in the hospital. Eventually, the superintendent forbade her from keeping any writing materials, but she was successful in hiding her journal pages inside the pockets of her clothing. And it would take over 3 years for Elizabeth to complain about urine-soaked floors, inadequate bed linens, and nutritionally poor food. And then the superintendent had decided that was it, and Elizabeth had to go. He was fed up with her complaints, her lobbying, her registering this stuff. So in the spring of 1863, the hospitals officially declared her incurably insane, and they released her, presumably because they wanted to make room for curable patients. And she was incurable. There was no reason to keep her. And when they released her, they unknowingly released her with her hidden journal. So when she was released, to Theo's despair, she found out that her friends and her older children had been protesting all along for her to be released. They felt her confinement was unjust. And she learned and discovered that her house had really fallen into disrepair.
Wow. Wait, so real quickly.
Yeah.
Incurable. So there was no other solution then but to release her to her family at that point.
Well, the superintendent wanted her gone. She was basically causing too much trouble and exposing too many things about what was going on at the hospital.
Right, but there wasn't like curable patients go here, the incurable though go here. No, they just go back to their families at this point.
Right. I think that she was the only patient deemed incurable. I don't think that was like a normal thing that the hospital did, but they made a special exception for Elizabeth.
Wow.
She was so incurable, she had to go.
Okay, and by the way, I just looked it up. In the 1800s, shock treatments for mental illness were happening.
Oh, okay.
So good to know.
And
good to
yes,
know. Okay.
or bad to know.
Yes,
right?
or bad to know, exactly.
Yeah. So Theo had his 13-year-old daughter assuming all of the chores previously done by Elizabeth, cooking, cleaning, mending, and managing the house.
Poor thing. My daughter's age.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine somebody Ellery's age being responsible for all of that?
I can only wish.
Right? Who said that child abuse is about... I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. She makes a meal every now and then. She does her part. It's
yeah,
okay.
I mean, chores are one
Yeah.
thing, but running a home is entirely different.
Yeah.
So Theo kept a very firm hand on Elizabeth, and he threatened again and again to have her recommitted if she defied him. And he counseled his children not to pay any attention to what their mother asked them to do or what she said. He consistently and continually reminded them that their mother had been declared legally insane. So if that weren't enough, Theo decided to confine her to a room. He locked the door and nailed the window shut so she couldn't escape. Meals were sent to her room where she ate alone, and he cut off the heat to the room and refused to allow the children to visit.
What an
their
abusive, awful prick. God, this guy needs to go. Wait, we need the Glulaby.
Yeah, the Glulaby gang to come beat him up.
That's what we need right now. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
unfortunately, they weren't around back in the 1860s. So in late December 1863, Theo petitioned to have Elizabeth recommitted, but the trustees of the Illinois hospital refused, saying they believed she would always be insane and the hospital needed spaces, again, for patients who could be cured.
Wow.
Furious, Theo launched into a plan for her to be committed in Massachusetts, at a hospital in Massachusetts instead, and he was determined to have her committed for life.
Oh, so sad.
But this is where Elizabeth's fate takes a turn. She was able to drop a letter out of her window describing her predicament, which was then delivered by a friend of hers to a judge named Judge Charles Starr. And Judge Starr issued a writ of habeas corpus, which required Theo to bring his wife to his chambers in order to be compelled, and he complied with the order on January 12, 1864. He arrived at the judge's chambers with a written statement regarding Elizabeth's incurable insanity from the Illinois State Asylum, and told the judge that he was allowing her all the liberties that were compatible with her welfare and safety.
Liar.
Well,
Liar.
Judge Starr did not find this to be sufficient justification.
Mm-hmm.
And he scheduled a jury trial to address the issue and determine Elizabeth Packard's sanity. And Reverend Packard, the plaintiff in this case, claimed that his wife's insanity entitled him to confine her in her home, and Elizabeth Packard, the defendant, needed to prove her sanity to regain her freedom.
Wow.
So there was a trial, Packard versus Packard, and it lasted 5 days. And witnesses testified both for and against Elizabeth. Physicians who have spoken with her before her commitment to the Illinois State Hospital testified against her, One of these doctors, Dr. J.W. Brown, had spoken to Elizabeth under false pretenses. He introduced himself as a sewing machine salesman to interview and assess her mental state. And he testified that she had disliked being called insane. Imagine that.
I don't know why.
And he found her feelings towards her husband and religious beliefs to be evidence of her insanity. And the Reverend's sister and brother-in-law also testified that Elizabeth had tried to distance herself from her husband and the church, both of which they asserted were indications that she was in fact insane. So Elizabeth Packard's So Elizabeth Packard's lawyers called neighbors and friends to testify on her behalf, and Elizabeth was permitted to read an essay she had written for a Bible class that shared insights about her religious beliefs. Dr. Duncanson, a doctor and a theologian, also testified for her sanity. He'd spent hours talking with Elizabeth and disagreed with Dr. Brown's understanding of her religious statements. Dr. Duncanson argued that many intellectuals and theologians in Europe favored these new school doctrines, and he went on to describe his impression of his conversation with Elizabeth. On every topic I introduced, she was perfectly familiar and discussed them with an intelligence that at once showed she was possessed of a good education and a strong and vigorous mind. I did not agree with her in sentiment on many things, but I do not call people insane because they differ from me, or even a majority even of people.
Oh, awesome. We love him.
Yeah. Well, on January 18th, 1864, the jury reached a verdict in 7 minutes. And they announced that they found Elizabeth Packard sane.
Yay!
So Judge Charles R. Starr ordered Elizabeth Packard to be relieved of all restraints incompatible with her condition as a sane woman. Yay. And to restore her liberty. So when Elizabeth returned to her family home in Illinois, she found that the night before she was released, Theo had rented their home to another family. He sold all of her furniture, had taken her money, notes, wardrobe, and children, and left the state.
Can it get any worse?
Well, hang on. Elizabeth appealed to the Supreme Court of both Illinois and Massachusetts, to which her husband had taken her children, but she had no legal recourse as a married woman in those states, and she had no rights to the property or her children.
So she was left with nothing. So she's free, but she's left with nothing.
Well,
so far.
Eventually, Elizabeth became, and this is why she's our Sheela for today. Now I'm going to tell you who Elizabeth Packard is.
Woo! All right, get into it.
She became a national celebrity, publishing an armload of books and crisscrossing the United States on her decades-long reform campaign.
Ooh, I love her.
She not only advocated for married women's rights and freedom of speech, but for speaking out against the power of insane asylums. She became what scholars call a publicist and a lobbyist for better insanity laws.
Oh, thank God. I love her.
She really became a very vocal and notable spokesperson on many of the oppressions and abuse that she faced.
Yep. A champion for women, a champion for, the mentally or people who were presumed mentally ill.
Ill. And even if they were so badly treated in these asylums.
Sure.
So she petitioned absolutely. So she petitioned the Illinois and Massachusetts legislatures, and in 1869, legislation was passed in both states allowing married women equal rights to property and the custody of their children.
Oh my God, thank God.
I know, right? And upon the passage of this legislation, Theo voluntarily ceded custody of their children back to her, and her children came to live with her in Chicago.
Oh.
So scholar Catherine Burns Howard argued that Elizabeth Packard reinvented herself in this advocacy role, and she earned enough money not only to support her children, but she even supported her estranged husband from which she was remained separated from for the rest of her life.
She had to support his ass?
Well, I think she did. Like, she believed that once you married for life, and she was in better financial straits and just did what she needed to do.
Wow.
But she realized that how narrow her legal victory had been, and that the underlying social principles which had led to her confinement still basically existed. So she founded the Anti-Insane Asylum Society and published several books, including Marital Power Exemplified, or 3 years imprisonment for religious beliefs in 1864.
Wow.
She also published Great Disclosure of Spiritual Wickedness in High Places in 1865. The Mystic Key, or the Asylum Secret Unlocked, in 1866. And The Prisoner's Hidden Life, or the Insane Asylums Unveiled, in 1868. So in other words, she told all of the secrets of what happens behind these locked doors.
I wonder if she was friends with Nellie Bly. I mean, Nellie Bly is so known for exposing that. She pretended that she was insane.
Right.
And got committed in order to expose what was happening. I wonder if they were friends.
I'll have to look that up.
Around a similar time, yeah.
Yes. So in 1867, the state of Illinois passed a bill for the protection of personal liberty, which guaranteed that all people accused of insanity, including wives, had the right to a public hearing. And that right also became included in Massachusetts.
Wow.
Elizabeth also saw similar laws passed in 3 other states, and even so, she was strongly attacked by medical professionals and anonymous citizens, unlike others such as Dorothea Dix, with her former doctor from Jacksonville Insane Asylum, Dr. Andrew McFarland, who privately called her a sort of Joan of Arc in the matter of stirring up the personal prejudice.
Ugh.
Elizabeth's work on this front was broadly unappreciated while she was alive. She only received broader recognition starting in the 1930s by a well-known historian of mental illness, Albert Deutsch, and again in the 1960s from those who were attacking the medical model of insanity.
Wow.
And so in her book detailing her ordeal in 1867, Marital Power Exemplified, she stated, "I regarded the principle of religious tolerance as the vital principle on which our government was based. And I, in my ignorance, supposed this right was protected to all American citizens, even the wives of clergymen. But alas, my own sad experience has taught me the dangers of believing a lie on so vital a question. The result was I was legally kidnapped and imprisoned 3 years simply for uttering these opinions under these circumstances."
Wow, what a brave woman. What an amazing woman.
And so articulate.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So willing. You know, when her husband disappeared with her children and all of her belongings, you would think that she would have just gone into destitute, but actually it drove her to pure advocacy. And although she was contradicted and disliked and not supported by large communities with lots of power, she somehow earned enough money to support herself, her children, and her horrible estranged husband.
I still can't believe she had to support his ass.
Right.
Oh my God.
And numerous scholars have actually written about her life and the advocacy of Elizabeth Packard. Kate Moore's book, The Woman They Could Not Silence, details her 1860 involuntary commitment and abuse from the Illinois asylum and her advocacy. So I'd really like to get hold of that book.
Yes.
I mean, we have such short timelines on the podcast. Right. So, you know, I'd love us to get to a place where we could do these deeper dives beforehand.
I know.
And really come up with
I wonder if any of her family members are alive today. We'd love to hear from you, certainly. And her kids must have just been so damn proud of her.
Oh, I would imagine, especially the younger ones who got rescued from their father.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they must have just been so absolutely proud of her, so amazed, so inspired by her. I can't even imagine being her child.
I would think so. Yeah. I would think so. When Kate Moore came out with The Woman They Could Not Silence, it stirred a petition to rename a state mental health facility in Springford in Packard's name. Guess what name it would replace?
What?
That of Andrew McFarland, the doctor who participated in her wrongful insanity diagnosis.
Oh, that's so good. That's
and
so good.
Ultimately discharged her as incurable because he couldn't deal with all of her
that is
protests.
just desserts, man. Just desserts
I know.
right there. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
The woman they could not silence is said to tell the captivating story of Elizabeth Packard, a forgotten heroine whose harrowing ordeal in an insane asylum seems straight from the mind of Stephen King, except that every word was true.
Oh, I love that. Well done, April. I love Elizabeth Packard. I've heard her name before. It definitely rings a bell. But
especially given your interest in Nellie Bly.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
10 Days in the Madhouse. Yeah.
Right.
Little side note.
Yes.
Little side note from me on a personal level.
Yes.
So as I've mentioned this. As a teen, I was hospitalized when I was 15, and I had an eating disorder, but it basically caused me to have some really erratic behaviors. Like I ran out in front of traffic one time, and just like some crazy ass shit. You know, as a teenager, it was dramatic, whatever. But anyway, I got sent to this hospital, and I got kind of tricked into going. And like my parents came to pick me up from school, and they had my suitcase packed, and I had no choice, and it was like the scariest thing, and it was like all locked up, and you know, we couldn't get out, and I remember I was the new kid. I think I've mentioned this before in other episodes perhaps, but I had to guard the door when people were like, you know, making out or having sex. These were like teenagers, but I was the new kid, so I'd always have to guard the door.
So that was your job.
That was my job, yeah. But the point being is that like, it was like everybody was overly medicated. And I remember one time I found a girl and she had slit her wrist with a toothpaste tube.
Oh my gosh.
And I ran, because I found her in the bathtub, and I ran to tell them. And instead of like tending to her, they more or less like put me in a straitjacket. They were just like, you need to calm down. We're going to give you something. I'm just like, no, just go help Beverly. Go help her. You know, it was this crazy. And just the environment, it was so freaking awful. Yeah. It was so, and like you said, you know, I mean, it gave me perspective, certainly. I always say, like, that was the best thing about it, that it gave me perspective. But I ended up calling my dad. And I said, Dad, if you don't come get me tomorrow, I'm going to escape. And I will never forgive you, and you'll never see me again.
Oh, wow.
And my dad used to talk about, I never heard you more serious in my life. And he rescued me. Wow. Thank God.
Thank goodness.
And really what made me better is that I got a really good therapist, and that it did give me some perspective, but that, you know, time and a good therapist. Certainly wasn't being in that hospital, you know, that made it better for me. So,
which is so tragic. I'm not sure if mental health facilities of today are as good as you wish they were.
Right.
They're very creepy and sad.
Exactly. You know, maybe there's some improvements. And I don't want to totally diss on my experience. There were some good people who worked there who were kind.
Yeah, I don't think you can say all that wholesale. I think in Elizabeth Packard's day, it was just not even being able as a female, as a married woman, to
you had no rights.
Make a case for herself.
No.
And she was very fortunate that judge was so progressive and really listened, and that jury, I mean, took 7 minutes to decide.
That's amazing.
She was sane.
And thank you to her friend who delivered the note.
Right.
Because without that friend, I don't know.
So where Nellie Bly is a little bit more known, I really wanted to unearth her and give her some light, because she was a maverick of her era and she made a lasting difference.
Yeah, in so many ways. Not just for mental illness and for improvements in how those facilities were run, but also for women and their rights with their children, you know, having rights to their children and their property. And, you know, I mean, this is like tenfold. She did amazing things for so many people. So
she really did.
Elizabeth Packard. Yes. Yay. Well, thank you, April. This is an awesome episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. We really appreciate it. And let us know what you think about Elizabeth Packard. Any questions, any comments, we welcome them. Bring us your Sheelas. Keep listening. We thank you. And keep fighting, ladies.
Keep fighting the fight.
Keep fighting the fight. Keep it going. All right. Thanks. Until next time.
Until next time.
Unabashed in your glory.